morning, everyone. Compliance in Africa is no longer about a single regulator. It is about navigating complex ecosystems of licensing entities, financial intelligence units, data protection bodies, and tax agencies. The challenge is no longer just compliance, it's coordination. So today, we are going to explore a very practical question. Are we making compliance clearer or more complex for operators? I will be joined by a very experienced panel representing regulation, AML, data protection across the continent. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite Mr. Lungile Dukwana to the stage. Mr. Lungile Dukwana will be followed by Dr. Vincent Olatunji. Fortune Sekgaphane. Denis Mudene Ngabirano. And finally, Emmanuel Sotande. It's all a gentleman-dominated panel. So I'll just ask from the far right, gentlemen, if you can introduce yourself, starting with your Fortune, briefly introduce yourself.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Fortune Sekgaphane. I'm the director of a consulting company, Bojosi Consulting Solutions. I've been in the industry for about 27 years. I've served as the CEO of the Mpumalanga Gambling Board in South Africa, and later served as the CEO of the Gaming Board of the Northwest Province in South Africa, and have been in the consulting space for a period of about 7 years. Thank you.
All right. Good morning. My name is Lungile Dukwana. I am the acting CEO of the National Gambling Board of South Africa. We are the regulators of gambling at the national level in South Africa. I've been with them for a few years, let me say a few months, because I think there's some work that I've been doing outside that for quite some time, over about 28 years. Thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dr. Vincent Olatunji. I am the National Commissioner, CEO, Nigeria Data Protection Commission. In my previous life, I've worked for over 30 years in the Nigeria Public Service, Federal Mass Transit, the National IT Development Agency, and I've been in the privacy ecosystem for like 9 years plus. I currently lead the privacy ecosystem in Nigeria, and I also lead the Anglophone Data Protection Authorities in Africa. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Emmanuel Sotande. I was a pioneer staff who started Nigeria Financial Intelligence Unit in 2004. And I've also contributed to the establishment of Economic and Financial Crime Commission, EFCC. I've worked for more than 27 years in combating illicit financial flow around designated non-financial institutions and also financial institutions as a whole. I'm currently the Chief Operating Officer in charge of designated non-financial business and profession, in which gaming sector is critical for the AML, compliance regulations, and the rest of it. thank you very much. Where we continue this morning event. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Denis Mudene Ngabirano is my name. CEO of Uganda's National Lotteries and Gaming Regulatory Board. I have been with the Gaming Board for the last 10 years. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Lungile, let me just kickstart with you. Where do regulatory overlaps most commonly occur, and how should operators manage them in practice?
Thank you for the question. Well, I'm going to reflect in the South African context as to how do we look in South Africa. For example, in South Africa, you will discover that in terms of the gambling regulatory framework, what establishes the industry, or the basis of it, is actually the constitution of the Republic of South Africa, which actually captures the responsibility for gambling, wagering, racing, and the other related aspects of what we're basically talking about. That is obviously supported by what we refer to as the National Gambling Act, which is the one that establishes the principles of the gambling industry in South Africa, so to speak. But it further goes on to establish what is called the National Gambling Policy Council, which is the intervening body between the various jurisdictions should there be inconsistency with the legislation. Now you further will have what we refer to as a National Gambling Policy that was established in 2016. And then lastly, what you will then find is that of the 9 or 10 jurisdictions that may be in South Africa, they will have their individual policy legislation based on the circumstances that are around them and their preferences that they may actually have, which of course must be addressed within the context of what I would call the context of the National Gambling Act. Now, in all of these things that are basically happening, we all have responsibilities as various regulators in South Africa, and obviously there would be overlaps. For example, one of the overlaps that would be immediately clear is that when you have national legislation that is governing all of the 8 of the 9 regulators that you'll find, or jurisdictions, there's bound to be inconsistencies in the implementation and in the application, but also in the interpretation. But also there's likely to be misalignment that you are basically going to find. Now, the operators get affected by those inconsistencies. And I think that the responsibility then of the operators is to make sure that they invest in understanding that complex environment that we actually have. But in South Africa, what is also provided for, as I've related, is what we call the NDPC, that National Gambling Policy Council, where if there's inconsistency with the application of the norms and standards, where there's inconsistency with the spirit of the act, then you go and intervene at that level in terms of that. Now, that assists in making sure that there's smoothing of the environment so that the operators can be in a safe space, so to speak. And it's a little bit more complicated also because you are not only dealing with the National Gambling Board, or you are not only dealing with the other 9 PLAs. There are also other regulatory authorities in terms of the standards. There may be what you call the NRCS, National Regulator for Compulsory Specifications. You will have SABS, which establishes some of the standards, and the other related bodies that are about that. So it's an ecosystem that we need to invest in understanding to make sure that you meet the standards, to make sure that you understand the regulation imperatives, and also the general issues that are there. That is bound to give some overlaps in terms of how that is interpreted and implemented. Maybe let me not go very far. I see you're going to stop me.
No, thank you very much, Lungile. Fortune, I see you've worked across multiple boards in South Africa. Do you agree, or is the issue much deeper? And also, are the Tinker standards part of the problem, or are the solution in Africa?
Thank you, Peter, and I'll just follow up on what Lungile said. But I want to just amplify one point that I find to be critical. For as long as there's no proper relationship functioning with clear understanding between the regulator and the operator in any jurisdiction, that overlap is going to create more problems than one would expect. In the South African context, as Lungile said, you will have the national gambling policy from which the legislation was developed. And it promotes concurrent competence between the National Gambling Board and the Provincial Gambling Board. While in terms of the understanding of what the National Gambling National Gaming Act had to achieve, one would also find difficulty when you come to provinces, because the National Gaming Board is expected to set uniform norms and standards under which the provinces should operate. Now, the overlap will be there every now and then, because the National Gambling Board would want to maintain those standards while provinces enjoy, in terms of the Constitution, the right, or the power rather, the power to legislate on their own. What I can say, Peter, which is important, is that this problem cannot be solved without the regulator and the operator coming into one room and agreeing on how to interact in regulation of gambling in a country like South Africa. I'll give you an example. In some jurisdictions, you find that there is no policy framework. If there is no policy framework, that creates a problem, because everyone who believes he's got a power or authority that he enjoys in terms of a particular piece of legislation would want to exercise that. What I always suggest and propose is that if you find a number of agencies responsible for regulation of a particular sector, specifically in this instance gambling, which ties up with others, you need to bring all stakeholders under one roof and try to create harmony. While on the other hand, you may want to promote that operators form associations so that they can make submissions to these agencies all as a collective. It's always appreciated that the regulator should come to the party and assist by putting together those agencies in order to develop seamless systems of regulatory compliance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fortune. Denis, where are the biggest compliance burdens today, and what frustrates you the most, how regulation is currently applied across Africa?
Thank you, Peter. There are majorly 4 areas that are a burden to especially African gaming operators that need to be looked at. One is the AML CFT compliance, data protection compliance, multi-jurisdictional licensing. A number of operators now in Africa are operating in quite a number of countries, and also responsible gaming compliance. And lastly, of course, standardization of the gaming standards. When you look at AML compliance, in the context of Uganda, under the AML Act, the supervisory bodies are mandated to ensure compliance of the entities that they regulate. In this case, us as a gaming body in Uganda, the AML law mandates us to ensure that we ensure compliance of AML requirements. But what we've realized is that there is quite a lot of continuous transactional monitoring, suspicious transaction reporting, and training. And these are all capital intensive, if I might say. There is quite a burden in investing in these activities. When it gets to data protection, we have a Data Protection and Privacy Act, which was enacted in 2019, and there's really been a challenge in capacity building, and also appreciating what kind of data is collected, how is it processed, how is it shared, for what reasons are they being shared. When it comes to multi-jurisdictional licensing, like I said, a number of operators are operating in different jurisdictions. These operators face challenges to do with the licensing structure. A case in Uganda, we do annual licensing, while you find other countries like South Africa, Botswana are doing 3 years licensing. So it becomes a challenge to keep up on these requirements. Lastly, with responsible gaming, the challenge we are facing is some of the operators look at responsible gaming as a way of impacting negatively on their businesses. No operator wants to lose a player. Every operator wants to keep a player, but some of these players are getting addicted. So it becomes a challenge for them to appreciate that responsible gaming in the long run, ensuring responsible gaming in the long run is important for sustaining an operator who keeps bringing their money. But the problem comes to how much do I get now? How much do I make, other than looking at how do I support this player who is becoming addicted. But from the ground look of things is the problem is that all these challenges are brought by creating regulations in silos. If AML, if data protection and all people responsible for responsible gaming come together and create a dialogue while putting regulations in place, will basically minimize on the pressures that these operators do face.
Thank you very much, Denis. Ladies and gentlemen, now I would like to go deeper into where agencies must work together. Denis, you mentioned issues of AML, you mentioned issues of data protection, but now let me go to Emmanuel and Vincent. Emmanuel, from an AML perspective, and for you, Vincent, from a data side, how do we avoid putting operators in conflicting compliance positions?
Thank you very much for that question. I think it is very important to state that the role of the two agencies are quite different. For example, Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit is responsible for receiving, analyzing, and disseminating intelligence that have to do with money laundering and terror financing, and also intelligence around national security related issue. In the context of alignment, what we think to do in the nearest future is to sign memorandum of understanding with data protection authorities for us to be able to share intelligence in how to improve their own operations. Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit also appreciate the role of the gaming industry, particularly the operators, on their role regarding the removal of Nigeria from the grey list. The operators deserve a round of applause for the cooperation they have shown during removal of Nigeria from the grey list. We appreciate the reports that you share with us in terms of mandatory disclosure, which is also different from the aspect of data protection have to do with when transactions are not offensive or are not threshold based, or transactions are also not suspicious transaction. The operators are really working closely with Nigeria Financial Intelligence Unit and also the Data Protection Authority in Nigeria, and that is why we experience the transformation that the whole world thought is not going to be possible for Nigeria to come out of the grey list. And not only that we are out of the grey list due to the effective collaboration between twin agency and the regulators in the gaming space, and also the operators. We are also being invited, as we speak, Nigeria is a guest member at the FATF body in France. So we continue to speak on how to improve gaming industry in Nigeria at the FATF level. We also strive to work closely with other operators in order to ensure that the gaming environment is being very, very safe from being attract illicit financial flow that can lead to money laundering and terror financing. To this end, I will give the floor to Dr. Vincent to make some contribution regarding to the alignment of the twin agency. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Morning once more, everybody. Let me start by really commending the organizers of this event for putting this together, because look at the number of Africans participating in one gaming or the other every day is really huge. For instance, in Nigeria alone, over 60 million Nigerians engage in one gaming or the other every day, out of 230 million people, chunk of our population. And coming to regulating this ecosystem, I think my brother from Uganda mentioned something which is really critical: responsible gaming. I think that should be the focus of all of us. Either you are regulating data protection, you are regulating gaming, you are with NFIU, what should be our focus is responsible gaming. And for all of us to now come in to play our roles to ensure that whatever we do in the area of gaming or lottery in Africa, that aspect of responsibility and accountability on the part of the stakeholders, operators, I think is really important. There is no way there will not be in regulations. But the most important thing is for us to know our limitations, understand the mandate and the roles of all regulators within the ecosystem. For instance, as my brother from the NFI rightly mentioned, we're working closely with them, that even a working team, and we're supporting them with the area of privacy for them to probably understand what privacy is all about. In fulfilling their mandate, they have the right to have access to information. More importantly, if it is for investigation, for prosecution of crimes, and for the prevention of crimes. However, we need to really have a proper guideline on who is in charge of such information, who has access to it, who are they shared with, what kind of safeguards are they putting in terms of exchanging information between one organization or the other, maybe a scripture or whatever. This is really important, which they need to properly incorporate. Now, the stakeholders, the operators in the sector. For instance, something as simple as know your customer. Before you allow somebody to come and play or take, you need to know that fellow. What kind of information are you actually looking at for? Whereas in data protection, there is what you call data limitation. That you don't ask for information or data that you don't need about anybody because you want to go into one gaming or the other. Know your customer is really key. And we need to look at how we can incorporate that part of privacy. Now, monitoring financial transactions, which has to do with the work of NFIU, to what extent are they monitoring this? Is there any transparency on the part of the operators to say, oh, where you engage with us, we are allowed by law to share your information with NFIU for illicit financial transactions. Please, we need to let them know that this is transparency. Are they aware? Are they even sharing this information with them? How about marketing? Now you've collected their information for one purpose. Are you using that information to market them for another purpose? These are the restrictions which are there. And that is why the most important thing for us is all of us to work together, collaborate, know our roles, know our mandates, and how can we support one another to ensure that we have responsible gaming in Africa. Even looking at age alone, when it comes to responsible gaming, how about students spending their school fees for lottery or for gaming? And did you really ascertain their age? And what measure, what mechanism did you use to even know their age? Is it through their name or passport or whatever? What information does that document contain? And which one do you have access to? These are things that we need to look at properly. But as I said, the most important thing is for all of us to know our mandate and know that what we are trying to do is to add value to the mandate of one another for us to be able to achieve responsible gaming for all Africans. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vincent. Going back to you, Emmanuel, Dr. Vincent just mentioned something about issues of KYC and also school-going kids using their school fees money to gamble. So from your viewpoint, where are operators underestimating AML risks today? Is it issues of onboarding customers? Is it issues of transactions and reporting? I know Dr. Vincent touched on that one. So maybe if you can just expound further what you are seeing from your point of view. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I want to share some mind-blowing revelation that we find out during the sectorial risk assessment conducted last year within the gaming industry. What we find out is that land-based gaming, only 4% of land-based gaming is of risk-oriented, whereas about 96% of the gaming operations in Nigeria is online. And this further explain the reason why the risk is so enormous and so very critical for the industry. So the areas that we identify that the operator should pay more attention is to be able to identify key factors that are tied with products, services, and also customer risk. And also we also find out delivery channel risk, which is whether you are providing the service online or you are providing the service on-site. So what we've seen in terms of the vulnerability is that most of the products that are being offered online are more prone to risks of money laundering because it gives room for a lot of animosity of such transactions. And there is need for the operator to pay more attention on how to monitor such transactions that are provided within the online using internet facility. It is also very pertinent to explain that categorizations of the operators, you need to also categorize what kind of risk-based approach do you want to adopt to monitor this service that you are providing. So we also need to be looking at, for the regulator, risk-based supervision is also very critical. We need to look at how do we look at products that are risk-based, concentrate more resources on regulating risk-based products vis-a-vis products that are not of high risk. This is also very critical. Many operators also underestimate the need to provide adequate training to be able to expose their employees to adequate training that will be able to enable them to understand the risk and content of their products, specifically those products that are being presumed of very vulnerable and high risk. And if we are able to have a very sound risk-based framework within our operation, then we are going to be talking about responsible gaming, because you have been able to identify those products that are very volatile and products that are also preventing majorly like what Dr. Vincent mentioned regarding the student losing their tuition fee to gaming. we must be able to have a very strong base operational risk assessment for us to be able to ensure that we have a very safe environment where gaming can be presumed to be responsible. I would also like to mention that there is, very importantly, institutional collaboration, sharing knowledge about risk. Sometimes you go to a particular gaming outfit, you want to do, probably go into gaming, and they may relax their own know your customer principle. And you get to another gaming operator, they will put in a very stringent know your customer principle. So we have to have industrial best practice for know your customers. In other words, operators have to have a cutting edge KYC that is not relaxed. In situations whereby we have diverse or also differ in terms of KYC principle that we operate within our operations, can make some operators to be more vulnerable to the risks of money laundering. To this note, I will also say that it is important for us to also encourage what the 36 states in Nigeria are doing, 36 state regulators coming together to provide a guidelines and also a mechanism to regulate the gaming industry, which is also a best practices that we think is something that other countries should emulate. Thank you very much once again for listening.
Okay, thank you very much, Emmanuel. Moving on, Vincent, what are the briefly top data protection priorities that operators must get right, and what are the biggest mistakes that you are seeing?
Thank you. As we are all aware that the whole essence of data protection is to protect the rights, the freedoms, and the interest of all citizens and legal residents in African countries. And in whatever they are doing, wherever their data is being collected or shared, or processed or shared, there are some basic principles that we need to really respect and ensure that we implement to ensure compliance. For instance, something as simple as data subject rights. What kind of right do they have when you collect and process their data in terms of consent, in terms of lawful processing of their personal data, in terms of transparency, that is, where you want to collect their information, you tell them all you want to use the data for, and the fact that you are not going to share with any third party without their consent, and more importantly that you are not going to expose them. You put in place adequate safeguards in terms of protection that will prevent any unauthorized access to their personal information. Also, you look at the areas of data minimization. There are a lot of operators who collect data they don't even need. So with that, we are exposing them to more risk when you collect unnecessary data from them. So it's really important to ensure that you practice data minimization. There's security. What kind of security measures are you putting in place to ensure that the data with you is adequately protected? Then in terms of the caliber of staff collecting and processing such data, do they even understand anything about data privacy? To know that, yes, this data that I'm collecting, the owner of the data is giving it to you in trust. And to be able to have confidence in you that, yes, when you collect and process such data, do they even understand this? If they don't, what measures are you put in place to build capacity to create awareness among your staff to ensure that whenever data is collected, it will be gradually protected? Also, data sharing mechanism. You are sharing your data with a third party. What kind of security measures are you putting in place to ensure that there is no unauthorized access? And all these are really important for the data subject, because these are things that you need to put in place to ensure that they have trust in your data processing activities. Without all this, nobody will trust your system, nobody will trust your the way you collect and manage data, and to a large extent, it will impact negatively on the ecosystem. So I think these are the basic things that you need to really incorporate in their data processing activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are zooming out beyond compliance and looking into policy and the market impact. Denis, I'll start with you on this one. Then, Lungile, I'll need your input. Denis, how do we balance revenue generation with a sustainable market? And how do we avoid pushing activity into unregulated spaces?
Thank you, Peter. I think broadly tax authorities in Africa are facing pressure to maximize revenue, but I believe punitive and unpredictable tax ultimately drives the tax, rather shrinks the tax base and drives operators underground offshore. And to me, I believe the balance lies in one, dialogue before legislation. It's important that the tax authorities do formally engage these operators on the new levies they want to create, the percentages they are going to charge, and the formality on how this tax is collected. And if this dialogue is held across board, then that makes it sustainable for the operators. Secondly, I believe through tax incentives for compliance, especially for operators who invest in AML tools, responsible gaming, local technology, should get some tax incentives to basically make their business sustainable. So those are the two major areas I can, for now, focus on to make it sustainable for the operators.
Okay, thank you. Lungile?
No, I think that Denis has covered most of the stuff that has to do with taxation. Of course, the most important aspect is to make sure that whilst we are seeking to make sure that taxation is actually reasonable and there is incentive for the investors to invest in the various jurisdictions, at the same time, we must make sure that we do manage the issue of responsible gambling and minimizing the harm. Because in terms of our act, part of the aims of that act is to balance the economic the economic growth that comes as a result of the gambling, but also make sure that we minimize the social harm. That becomes one of the biggest issues that we have to deal with. That's why we talk about responsible gambling in most of the time. And it is true that if the taxation regime is quite high, it may lead to the illicit gambling that you are going to find. And the dangers of that is that you are not going to be able to derive the kind of revenue you expect to derive, because it will push them, it will push the illegal gambling aspect of it, which then becomes the responsibility of the various jurisdictions within that particular country to make sure that you fight in coordination between the various jurisdictions to make sure that illegal gambling is actually dealt with. I think that's the first point. In South Africa, there's an interesting phenomenon in terms of managing the responsible gambling aspect. 0.1% of the GGR is actually given to what we refer to as the South African Responsible Gambling Foundation, which is meant to manage the effects of gambling and to promote responsible gambling. That is one of the most important aspects that we should be considering as well. Whether that 0.1% is realistic or not is another debate that could actually be held. On the other hand as well, we all have a responsibility to make sure that the gambling industry is a sustainable industry. You minimize the harm, you maximize the returns, but at the same time, we must make sure that it's something that is sustainable going forward. Because if we can't, we are going to be in a hurry to make a revenue, but at the end, it's not going to be sustainable. So there must be sustainability of the market. The kind of the technology that we adopt is the one that is going to make sure that the KYC processes, we know what is happening, we know who the customer is, we know how we are dealing with that. The AML processes that we spoke about are quite important as well as we speak. In fact, in South Africa, there's an interesting one. The center is the FIC, we call it the Financial Intelligence Center, that we work with in terms of making sure that we deal with issues of money laundering, I think, as it has been spoken to. So cooperation becomes very important between the financial institutions, the regulators, and the tax regulators as well, to make sure that the impact is actually managed and the negative one is actually minimized and the illegal gambling is pushed away. I think that is what I would say, and allow the other speakers to come in.
Okay. No, thank you very much, Lungile. Fortune, just to bring you in, at what point does compliance start driving players out of the regulated market? Just briefly before we move on to the next one.
Thank you, Peter. I know I have to be brief, but I missed the earlier question when you referred to technical standards, whether it's a burden or should be perceived as a burden to regulatory compliance or not. I'm going to touch on that briefly, and then I will then respond to your next question. I just want to appeal to regulators to just take a stance, all of them, and agree that there's no reason at all for us to be trying to apply different standards in Africa. Technical standards I'm referring to. There is a great opportunity for us to come together and develop, or if we don't have any technical standards ready at the moment, but to adopt internationally recognized technical standards that we can, over a period of time, adjust, amend to suit our needs. One, appreciate the peculiarities of our different jurisdictions. For a number of reasons, we may not want to or choose to operate the same way. But most importantly, we need to find at least a dominant position or percentage of collaboration, and the use of technical standards will be one of those great opportunities. It shouldn't be seen as a burden, Peter. It should be seen as an element that would use to ensure that games are played fairly and that we have record of all the transactions. I do not think, on the second question, I do not think that in this space that we are in, with the dominance of online, one could rather say the smaller players in the industry, and I understood your question to be mainly referring to operators, not players as in punters. What I always find to be a challenge as I go to different jurisdictions in the African continent is that we fail to develop clear-cut requirements for licensing, which would take into consideration, call them small, medium, micro, and large industries or companies who would want to participate in the industry. We just want to apply a one-size-fits-all type of arrangement, and unfortunately that doesn't do well for economic development in our different jurisdictions. As I said earlier, what happens in, for example, Namibia may not be precisely the same thing that happens in Nigeria. Whoever wants to participate in a licensing process in Namibia may not be the same company that wants to participate in a licensing process in Nigeria. What we would do is at least develop, I know in some jurisdictions people just apply for licenses, but that is where we go wrong. At least develop a list of requirements, be mindful of different sizes of players in the industry so that you can accommodate everyone who wants to participate in this industry. We do appreciate that it's important to have an investor who will be able to stay in the market, who will be able to sustain their operations. But it's also disadvantageous to our people in Africa not to get an opportunity to participate. I would like to appeal as well, as I respond to your question, Peter, that all the big players must also understand that the market as it grows and opens in Africa gives them an opportunity to partner with those small enterprises that we are referring to who are likely to be kicked out of the market. Because we would like to see a situation where there's proper socio-economic development for Africa. We would like to see a situation where there's proper social responsibility being extrapolated from those license arrangements. But if you do not have a proper list of requirements which must be adhered to by applicants of different sizes if you choose to adopt that model. You are not going to achieve what you want to achieve by accommodating all in Africa. Unfortunately, Peter, in closing, if we don't observe this carefully, and I'm saying this with the greatest respect of all the big players in the industry, we would have this market all taken away without the small players in our countries participating. So it is the responsibility of each and every regulator to make sure that that arrangement is kept sustainable to even include the small players. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fortune. You did talk a lot in terms of all this cooperation, what needs to be done around the big and the small operators, but now in terms of industry collaboration, maybe taking it to the regulators. I know you've been highlighting the regulators, so what do you think are the biggest barriers to collaboration in Africa, and how do you think we should fix them? This one, talking to the regulator, looking at the fact that you've been a regulator for over 27 years. Then later on, Lungile, Denis, I also want you to comment on the biggest barriers of collaboration in Africa.
Thank you, Peter. I always say our institutional arrangements right at the top are very key. In some jurisdictions, I found out that you do not find a proper relationship between ministries responsible for regulation of gambling. The worst that you can find is that in one state you may find 3 ministers responsible for regulation of gambling. So that creates a frustration. Before you can even think about how you can collaborate with other regulators in other African states, your house is not clean and is going to create confusion. It is appealed that we know in our own countries, we try first to put together an institution that would be the mouthpiece of gambling regulation. Because if we have a situation when one department is taking gambling as a sporting activity and having its own set of rules there, and another department is taking gambling as a revenue generator and is having a separate set of rules there, we're going to have a serious challenge going outside. Coming closer and quicker to your question, Peter, collaboration in Africa is very important. I don't want to prioritize collaboration and harmonization. I would like to start with collaboration. It is very important that we find rules of engagement as regulators. We all agree this is how we're going to regulate the industry. It's not difficult. But the challenges that you find is sometimes that the system is not holding, and we sit in conferences like this, I always say, and we leave this conference with all the beautiful notes that we would have made. But we fail to go back home and convert those notes into an action plan. I've observed jurisdictions, one country to another, signing memoranda of understanding. Most of those documents, Peter, are lying somewhere in the shelves there. And they were not developed with the commitment enough to say we are going to work together and we are going to extend working together. Africa will not survive a regulation of industry to protect its people, as we earlier said, that there is a risk of us not cracking the balance between the economic benefits of gambling and public health. So if we do not collaborate and develop those systems, and we cannot maintain relations to make sure that at least we have a well-developed set of rules of engagement, we won't agree on everything. But at least if there are 90% of things, I mean, for example, employee registration. Employee registration should be very simple in the gaming space because we can agree to the list of requirements for one to be registered as a key employee. Gaming equipment testing, like I said earlier, should be an easy thing for us to agree on. Cross-border movement of gambling machines, it should be an easy thing to agree on, to say if machines leave my country to another country, what are the requirements we should be observed. With that said,
Thank
Peter,
you very much. We are running out of... briefly, we are only left with 2 minutes.
Yeah, no, I think he took all of the areas that I wanted to speak to, but I would think that there is an important, obviously, for institutional arrangements that are going to make sure that there's better cooperation from the highest level and to the level of the regulators themselves, because I think that the regulators should be able to speak amongst each other and identify those soft areas of collaboration, whether you identify on the issues of the machines and the employee registration forms that you're going to have, but also it must also talk to the kind of the standards like the anti-money laundering aspects that are there, because I think they're easier to actually collaborate on that particular level. So I think it's very important going forward that we adopt that approach and we adopt common standards, but also around the levels of transformation agenda that we are actually going to have between the bigger and the smaller operators. It's going to be very much important because the operators that operate in our own countries are basically the same operators. Okay. And it's important that we go to that stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lungile. Before you come in, Dennis, because we are left with a minute, may I ask all of you to maybe talk. I'll give you 10 seconds each. How effective is collaboration today, and where are we seeing the gaps? Just briefly, so we can close. We can start with you, Dr. Vincent.
I think in the spirit of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, there's no way we move forward without proper collaboration among African countries. For instance, in the area of data privacy, if you have fragmented laws in different countries, that if you come to Nigeria, you obey a kind of law, you go to another country, you obey another kind of law. This will definitely put restrictions into the level of development that we're expecting. We are no more looking at developmental regulations again. And this is one of the things that innovators really see as something coming to impede the innovative ideas. How can we do proper regulation in the way that will stimulate growth and development in Africa? So we need to do proper harmonization of our laws to ensure that issues around privacy is really important, and other people from other sectors too. In addition to that, we need to create proper awareness to let people probably understand what we're trying to achieve in the area of collaboration among the different organizations. Thank you.
Just briefly, don't have
All
to.
right, thank you very much. In order to add to what Dr. Job said, I think it is very important to bring to the notice of the gaming operators in Nigeria the need for us to do a proper due diligence on the investors that are coming from other countries. Because what we have seen at the NFIU presume that there are some illicit financial flow finding their way into the gaming sector. So it is very important for the operator to come to the NFIU whenever investors are coming to ask for questions around the personality of who is investing. And this is very profound on the principle of fit and proper. So it is very important for the operators within the 36 states of Nigeria to constantly ask NFIU questions about those investors, because we have a lot of intelligence that we can share with you to enable, that the gaming environment is secure and safe for everyone to invest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Briefly, Dennis?
Thank you, Peter. I think industry-wide collaboration is essential given the fragmented regulatory landscape. And I think some of the mechanisms would be through the Pan-African industry associations, like the African iGaming Alliance that you lead, that need to be the face or interface with the regulators to provide a unified position on, for example, responsible gaming codes, standardization, and I believe that will also reduce the gap that there is between the regulators and the operators.
No, thank you very much, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, if there is one thing that stands out is that compliance is no longer a single agency issue, it's a system-wide challenge. And if that system becomes too complex, too fragmented, too costly, we don't eliminate risk, we displace it. So there is a real opportunity for Africa in this, not just to regulate, but to regulate intelligently through better coordination, clear guidance, and in a risk-based way, because ultimately the goal is not just compliance, it's a sustainable and well-functioning iGaming or gambling market. With those few words, I thank you all. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, keep your round of applause going as our panel exits the stage. Fantastic engagement, a very fruitful conversation. And of course, we continue to look forward to a day filled with impactful conversations today. This is the Africa Gaming Expo 2026. We wish you all a very warm welcome to Lagos, Nigeria. We know you enjoyed the cocktail yesterday, and you sure are to enjoy a lot more Nigerian hospitality as we exchange ideas and grow the industry and continue to deliberate on ways to grow African gaming.